I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Art, the podcast where we get to know the women behind their art.
If you don't feel it, I'll make you feel it. I'll show you what I mean. If you don't feel it, I'll make you feel it. I'll bring you to your knees. If you follow me.
My guest this week is Ashley Barron, an international award-winning director of photography with a string of credits across commercials, music videos, short films, TV and feature films. She is known for her work on Star's Lionsgate's production Dangerous Liaisons, as well as the Australian Academy Award-winning series The Tailings, All Creatures Great and Small, Season 2 for Channel 5 and PBS, and ITV's The Tower, Season 2. Born in Moscow in 1987 to her Russian mother Olga and Armenian father Sergei, Ashley draws on her international heritage, education and training, which gives her a unique perspective and approach to her art. At the age of 7, her family moved from Moscow to Limerick, Ireland, where she adapted from Russian to English as she blended into Irish life with her older brother Nick. As a teenager, she and her mother moved to Perth, Western Australia, after her parents separated, and Ashley had to once again adjust to a new culture while deciding on her career path. She attended Curtin University in Perth, where she gained her BA in film and TV. From there, her mother encouraged her to spend an exchange semester at the Ryerson University in Toronto, and then Hollywood, where she earned her MFA in cinematography at the American Film Institute Conservatory. In 2018, Ashley became one of only 15 women to receive accreditation from the Australian Cinematographers Society. Her work has earned a number of awards, including a coveted Gold Award from the Australian Cinematographers Society, an AACTA Award, which is the Aussie Oscar, a nomination at the prestigious Camera Image Cinematography Film Festival, an invitation for membership of the Illuminatrix Collective, and one of the earliest memberships of the International Collective of Female Cinematographers. Ashley, hi, welcome to the podcast.
G'day, lovely to be here.
And you are a keen podcaster, you told me.
I do love me a podcast, yes.
And does this mean you have time with your kind of work? I would imagine, it's like you're driving and loading the van and stuff like that in life outside and offset the way you get to listen to the podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a bit more time this past little while because of what's been going on in our industry. The follow-on effect of the US strikes have had a domino effect on the rest of the world, including Australia and the UK and beyond. So I've had a bit of time, but I also really enjoy for my downtime or my me time or, whatever that work-life balance. I love to go for walks or, ride bikes and things like that. So whenever I'm traveling to anywhere, podcast is great. And I also find that if I'm traveling to work, whether it be driving or a train or indeed a plane, they're really wonderful as well. Just sort of, little brain cleansers. And, you learn a lot. But I also, I listen to just a variety of podcasts. They range from non-industry stuff where it's, learning about other artists. For example, your podcast, which I've started to listen to, and then there's others that are more kind of food for the soul, human stuff, kind of more brain things, and then obviously industry stuff. So I listen to interviews with other cinematographers, other filmmakers, and so that's a learning experience for me as well. So I like to learn about other people, and so when I hear about other stories, it's nice to hear other people speak.
Well, you led me very nicely into my next question, was to ask you exactly where you are. And since you're not in the US, how much the strike has impacted you? Because as we know, it's continuing. Apart from the writers, it's an ongoing discussion.
It is.
Tell us a little bit about what that looks like outside of the US, Ashley.
It's a good question. I mean, it's impacted in the way that the work that would normally come, the American work. There's quite an infrastructure in both the UK and in Australia, where I work as well. There's an infrastructure for American productions, and as a result of those American productions not being around, there's a lot of people out of work, and that trickles down. Though I wasn't working on any project at the time that had to be suspended, that not only limits what you can be put up for, because there are no new projects coming up that you can interview for, but also the pool widens for everything else that does remain. So the competition is much greater. And that competition, well, not even that competition, but everyone starts to go for the same jobs, but also into other places like commercials and things like that. So, but the strikes also happened at a time where there are also issues with budgets, in other sectors like commissioners for various, in the UK, BBC or whatever you, and then in Australia others. But it's sort of it has impact at the same time. The impact on commercials is more about kind of a post-COVID, post-Brexit world where people are not sure how to present themselves and how to brand themselves and how to, all that. So it's sort of everything just happened at once, whether not all of it's strike related, so certainly effect on crew and that kind of thing. But in terms of like what's being made as well in other places has been affected at the same time. So it's just been a weird year. So it's been a good time to focus on yourself, which I've been doing, which has been good. And also meeting other people. So it's been good.
You mentioned to me earlier that you were reading a script. So things are trickling through then.
I've been fortunate to have had something come through. And I think it's because it's an English production. If you'd asked me a couple of days ago, I would have told you very different things. So let's hope it's the beginning of something. Everyone, up until yesterday, everyone was quite feeling quite positive about the strikes being over because, all the talk about the actors going back as well, SAG going back with the studios, but that didn't, as of yesterday, that didn't look very promising either. So we're all back to sort of square one, it feels like. But, I'm hoping that this will lead to some sort of systemic changes for the better. We'll see.
Yeah, well, we've got to get both, as we record this, as you say, they're still out, not even negotiating at the moment.
Yes, exactly.
So, it's a long road ahead. And clearly this is a very competitive industry too, Ashley, isn't it? You've been in it long enough to know how competitive it is. And also for you, very international. You mentioned also working in Australia there because your hometown is Perth, Western Australia, isn't it? But it's come about, you told me before, it's a long journey. So we're going to do a bit of globe trotting. We're going to go from, was it Moscow to Ireland to Perth? So let's start at the beginning, Ashley.
Sure. Rewind back to 87.
Right. Let's go all the way back. To March 1987. And you were born in Moscow. And your father, Sergei, and mother, Olga. Tell us a little bit about the backstory to that.
Oh, look, you basically summed it up pretty well there. Yeah, I was born in the Soviet Union to an Armenian dad and a Russian mum. And then a few years later, the fall of the Soviet Union occurred, and my father was able to practice business because before, working for yourself was not part of legality. So everyone worked for the state before. And so my dad, as a result, himself became an international businessman, and that allowed us to be able to live elsewhere. And things were getting quite rough in Moscow and Russia in general in the 90s. And so we moved to Ireland, where my dad had, people on the ground colleagues basically that were able to help us set up there. And so we moved with my mother and my brother, and my grandparents would come quite frequently, and we would spend the next decade growing up and going to school there. My brother is 6 years older than I, and he's still there. He's in Dublin now with his family. And I when I was 15, we moved. My mother got a job. My parents parted ways, and my mum was able to get a job in Australia that took us over there. So, yeah, I finished high school in Australia and university there. So, yeah, it's funny whenever I tell people my backstory, they always think that my father is a diplomat or or I'm an army brat or something, and it was just no, just the Soviets.
What line of business was he in then? What was the relationship with Ireland? Why Ireland?
Just the Irish started to do business. A very limited knowledge of mine, but they just started to do business with Moscow, kind of building businesses. And my dad was very good at connecting people with local businesses to sort of grow. That's entrepreneurial as far as I know. But yeah, and just so happened that was like the Irish house was built at that time, and my dad had something to do with that. So yeah, it was just.
What age were you?
The way the cookie crumbled. I was 7.
So what were your early memories of living there then as a child?
Not many. The odd image of a birthday or something like that. But yeah, I don't. I've been back maybe once or twice since, and I think my memories are to do with that. My memories really start more when I was 7. So with Ireland, so that's kind of why I sort of consider. I don't know. I guess Moscow is or Russia is sort of like a DNA connect, but I don't really kind of consciously know it.
So the culture, then the religion, the whole ethos of Russia, then wasn't something that you carried with you.
No, we carried movies with us and food. And the language, I can still speak it, but yeah, everything
Can
else.
you can still speak Russian?
I can, yeah. I would like to be better, but my mother is the only person I can practice with. So.
That's interesting. Yeah. Does it mean you have a Russian passport, or you can have one if you wanted?
I can have one. Mine expired. I don't really feel the need currently to refresh it, to be honest, with all that is now over there. So yeah, but I can. I think I can if I want to.
Then you had to learn English with an Irish accent, or did you have an Irish accent? Is that something you picked up at school?
The Irish accent, yeah, was quickly picked up, and my friends who met me when I moved to Australia told me I had a very thick one. But I'm very chameleonic, so it went away real quick. I think it became Australian. But yeah, I learned. I think I was quite young moving to Ireland, which my understanding is that the younger you are, the more you absorb languages. So I think I learned English in like a month or two. Like it was really very easy to pick it up. I mean, I have this weird ability to at least with languages and also like accents and things. And so I think it was a bit more natural for me. My mom still, like, for example, speaks with an accent, but my brother is very Irish accented. So yeah, really just the way it worked out.
Yeah. And what about the sense of humor though? Because that's developed, I guess, in those formative years. Did you pick that up at all?
The Irish sense of humor? I hope so. I don't know. I think maybe I'm a little bit more Eastern European, unfortunately. Like I don't get jokes. I'm very literal. Don't get me wrong, I get jokes. Like I love stand-up comedy, ironically. Like it's one of my favorite things to watch and be a part of. I'm going to one tomorrow, in fact. But yeah, just I'm not. I'd love to be a lot more quick. I'd love to be. I wish that was a bit more osmosis into me in the years of being an island, because I don't have that kind of quick reaction to jokes, which is always annoying when you're working with crew, because there's always that kind of back and forth banter, and I'm the kind of person that will think of a response like at night, 3 a.m. after it happened, or in the shower the next day, like, oh, that would have been so good to say.
So what kind of a child was Ashley Barron then when you were growing up in Ireland? Were you an indoor or an outdoor girl? What did you love doing?
Good question. If I can remember, I probably was a bit more indoor. Like my brother was a sporty guy. I was more of, I think I was a real, I was and still am an extrovert, I think. I mean, I'm more of I think they call it an omnivert now. I'm a bit of both now, but I was a big, I loved musical theater and I loved drama. And I loved, sort of dance and all that kind of thing. So I didn't get into the sports. Like my whole family were like basketball players and things. And I didn't get into that, but I really enjoyed creative arts basically from the beginning.
And what was your relationship like with your parents? Were you closer to one or the other? And did they share any common interests with you as a child?
Well, my dad worked a lot, so I didn't see him as much. I have a pretty great relationship with my mom. She's always been very supportive, but yeah, I've always been very different to everyone in my family. I've always been the one who's like, my brother's a lot more like them. So in terms of just, being the little go get a show pony. I mean, I'm a bit like, I'm a lot more like my dad in terms of being the kind of, in terms of ambition and in terms of people skills and kind of, entrepreneurship. So we share that. Definitely had my mom has always been, I mean, everyone has been always very supportive, whether they've never quite, they're only just starting to maybe. My mum understands the most about what I do because she's been there since I was trying to figure out what to do at uni. But they've always been very supportive. And my mum's one of the people that's always like, well, why don't you go do that? And then I'd be like, no, wait, actually, that's a good idea. Because of her, I went to the exchange semester in Canada, in Toronto, which changed my trajectory a lot because when I went there, someone pointed me towards the AFI and I applied. And then my mum always supported me along the way. She was even like, when I decided to do film, she was like, okay, we're going to go into the university. We're going to talk to your the head of the department so I can understand what this industry is about. Because she could see it was like the only thing that I used to do a lot. I used to do stuff, I used to take on a lot of extracurricular hobbies and activities. And I would nothing ever stuck, and the first thing that stuck was music. I played guitar as a kid and then I founded filmmaking and cinematography specifically. And that's where my love went. So I think as soon as she saw that I really loved something, she was like, all right, well, let's go figure out what this is. So yeah, it's always been good in that respect.
So very supportive. So when you were a child, then did you have a still camera or did you eventually get a camera? You were making your own movies. What was the catalyst for your interest?
No, I wasn't. I know I wasn't one of those kids that was like, yeah, I took out my father's Super 8. No, I the way it sort of kicked in was when I moved to Australia. I mean, I was always creative and I was always more, sort of the humanities, I guess you would call them, was always more of my thing. But when we moved but in Ireland, because I finished the last 2 years of high school in Australia. So in Ireland, all the subjects were your kind of stereotypical academic ones, maths, sciences, that kind of thing. And then when we moved to Australia, I went to a school that was it was quite a heavy ballet school. And part of that, which I didn't do, but it was just one of those schools that provided other things like media and photography. And then as soon as I did that, I was like, oh, and wow, you can I remember making my first music video and just something clicking, and then we just went, okay, because my whole family has only ever known the academic route to get to a career. And so they were like, all right, well, let's look at universities that do something to do with, visuals and photography, that kind of thing, and founded a film school, like a film bachelor's course. And for my final year, which was a 3-year degree, I was handed a camera, motion camera, as an Aton 16mm, and I went to buy a female cinematographer. Actually, she was a year ahead of me, and I shouted her on some of her short films that she shot for the course, and it was that was in Perth, and that was the end of it. And from then on, I knew this is it, and I just became sort of healthily obsessed, because I think sometimes when you're young, you can become like, this is it, and everything becomes about that. But it was the one thing that I it was not a euphoric it, it was just like a DNA it, the only thing that ever kind of made sense.
So that was the actual imprint then.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I loved movies growing up, and they always affected me. I would go see films, even as a child, seeing something like Matilda, and then I would start acting like Matilda. I always had this feeling like there was something in it. And I think the older I got and the more I was privy to films and actually filmmakers as a result of being, studying them, I started to recognize more about like, what a film could do in its entirety, and how it can make someone feel. And I just wanted that I wanted to be able to do that myself.
You may relate to this, Ashley, but I was that nerd that would go to the cinema, go to the movie theater, and I would watch every last credit and I would read them. I wouldn't just glance over them. I would read.
That's brilliant. Well, that's good on you. I think that's a sign of respect. We learned to do that at AFI in LA. When I didn't do that as a kid. You beat me to. You're a much better human than I am.
No, not at
I
all.
am. But we did, like, we would wait to watch all the credits, and our department, because we were the cinematography department, we would clap whenever the name of the cinematographer would come up. But I think that there is definitely a sign of respect to, like, I hate standing up. Even now, when I find myself doing it, I will stand at the back of the theater and just wait till all the credits roll, because it's just a sign of respect not to turn your back on the people that made the film. So, or whatever it is. Yeah. So good on you. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I still do it now. And even if my friends leave the movie theater, I will stay in there and watch everyone. It's part of absorbing the whole picture.
Yeah. I agree.
No pun intended, but it's the whole picture, right? It isn't just what the movie you've just watched or the documentary, whatever it is. It's the whole picture.
Well, yeah, and it's a collaborative effort. It's
right.
It's really, it's one of the most, like, I think obviously all the arts have a level of collaboration, but I find cinematography or like, the motion side of things is particularly so. It's like you need each other to make it.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is why I think where all of these issues going on right now.
There's no I in team, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Now, when you moved to Australia, then what age were you, and had your parents separated at that point, Ashley?
Yeah, they hadn't. So I was 15 at the time. So I turned 16 about 2 months later.
Okay, so you could speak English quite fluently then. Now all you have to do is ditch your Irish accent and pick up an Aussie accent.
That's right. I was a fluent Irish lady at that point.
And so you moved with your brother Nick and both parents?
No, at that point it was my mum and I. So my brother was older and at uni, so for him it made sense to stay, and my father remained in Russia. So it was my mum and I, which is great because like we became even closer as a result.
And why Perth? I know it's beautiful. I love the light in Perth.
Just my mum's work. Yeah.
And how did you fit in? How did you find that Australian culture?
It was magic. At the time, it was really magic. I think, like for me at the time, it was the most accepted, I think I'd felt. And it's funny because it was the first time where I really started to embrace my multiculturalism as well, because Australia, especially the school that I went to, was just, and Perth, I mean, Australian in all, because, it's such a hodgepodge of various backgrounds. But in Perth, in my school, it was so many people were like Serbian background, Croatian background, Greek, Italian, Irish, all of the colors of the rainbow, which was amazing. And, which I hadn't experienced at that point. And so, it was actually like sort of the norm to be a bunch of different things. And also because, in Australia, it's like everyone there is, first generation or like second, that they're, like everyone's got like English or Irish background, that kind of thing. So it was just, I found it really refreshing to feel like, being a multicultural background was a celebrated thing there.
Yeah, for sure. And you went and did your BA at Film and TV from Curtin University then. So tell us a little bit about that and who your influences were there, because often, it's the early tutors in our life that leave a stamp on us for life.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, so Curtin, because, any university, well, at least the university degrees that I've either been a part of or have heard through friends, the first year you're taking classes with other like journalism, other media, basically, so you're sort of having chats about discourse with, people who are doing journalism degree and other people who are doing other degrees. So it doesn't really, you have like one film course and you're sharing it with everyone else. And I think as the years went by, you got a bit more into just kind of honing in on filmmaking specifically. And for me, it's sort of, I knew that I was in the right direction, but nothing clicked until the camera was placed into my hand. And that was because I think people said, because at the time I thought I wanted to be a director because that's sort of all I knew. But I never really enjoyed elements of the direction. Like everything started, I always steered more towards like the color and the light. And so, and then, but someone said, you might want to leave university with a technical skill. So go find one. And someone handed me a camera and I was like, that's it. I don't care whether it's technical or whatever, like it's me. And so, the cinematographer, I think her surname was Connell. I think Bridie Connell, she was the person that sort of showed me the camera and took me on set with her, and it was really great. And then we had a tutor, who, Alex McPhee, who, was like quite a renowned at the time cinematographer in Australia. I think I hope he's still with us because he was of retirement age at that point. And he not only like took us under our, like me especially, because I think I was one of the few people who like really wanted to do cinematography, because I think they only allowed a certain handful of people to do the role of what you wanted to do. And there were so many people who wanted to be directors, but not all of them could do the directing, take on the directing positions. And so a lot of them were demoted in their opinion to, editor or cinematographer. So out of the cinematographers that were there, I think like at least maybe one or two of us who really, or maybe three who really, that's what they wanted to do. And so, and so Alex had me on his short films as a focus puller and all that. So that was really quite formative. And then, but one of the biggest parts of what Curtin provided was that they did this exchange semester, and they offered this exchange semester in Canada. My mom was the one who'd heard about this and said, do you reckon you might want to do that? And at first I was being a young person and going, no. And then I went, wait, actually, maybe she's got something, fine. And that was probably one of them. That was the most formative thing because, obviously as a human, because I went there, I turned 21 there and living by myself for the first time and, uni style digs and things and the coldest winter to hit Toronto in like 50 years. And so it was all a unique experience. But the biggest thing was that was the faculty there, because I did both photography and cinematography there. And the photographer there, I don't remember her surname, but she was Mandy, and she was amazing because she would be like, go out and take photos. And I went out and took some photos of the park, and I came back and she was the one that taught me about the elements of design and how like, you're not doing anything with your image. Like you're not pointing with my eye, you're not saying anything with it, and so she really taught me how to do that. Like, and so I would spend, and like, not only would I research elements of design, but then I would I really honed in on those images for my final project, to sort of really show, basically to emulate everything she said that I should. And so, and that was amazing. And that's where I learned about, sort of how cinematography is, or filmmaking is a series of images that all are, work in an editorial sense, and there's other elements that affect its meaning and its impact, sound, etc. Whereas photos, that's a still image that has to say everything, and I remember just thinking how like powerful that is as well. And so that was my first foray into kind of getting my brain into real image creation. And then the other one was I had a TA there, Stephen Whitehead, who's still a cinematographer in Toronto, and a good friend. And he helped me a lot when I was shooting my own little side projects. He was a camera assistant before he was a cinematographer, and so he would come and be a camera assistant for me just to help me. But also he was the one who suggested applying for the AFI, the American Film Institute Conservatory, and I hadn't heard of it before that. And then when I saw like the flyer, it was like Darren Aronofsky went there and Matty Libatique went there, and they are the filmmakers behind the film Requiem for a Dream, which was one of the first films that I saw that made me go, I want to do this. And so I was like, oh my God. So I spent, 6 months applying for that school. And it was through Stephen that I had met people who were able to, put in a referral for the application, others who had applied in other disciplines who would help me, like advise me on what to expect in the application process. So, and then I got in. So, without, they were those two, like Stephen and Mandy's photography teacher, were the two most, and obviously the people that they connected me with, there was a couple of cinematographers there who helped me during that time, but all of them came through Stephen. So they were really, that was the most life-changing 6 months. So all because of my mama and then the other people when I arrived.
I mean, that would have been the ideal progression then for you as a young woman, and at 21, getting that kind of leg up to go into LA and learn for 4 years in the industry. Were you then at that point or a little earlier, at what stage, I'm wondering, were you starting to look at the moving picture and thinking of the genre that was appealing to you? Were you actually starting to formulate your own creative eye and what was going to make you really tick? Was there anything in particular, or were you open to trying everything at that point? I'm just wondering when you started, because we develop a style, don't we? We develop an eye and a style no matter what our visual art. And I'm wondering at what point that was at.
It's a very good question, and the answer really lies in the fact that is a constant evolution. I've found. It was years later that became a conscious decision to really try hone that. I think at the beginning, and to be honest, when I look back, I think everything that I did still has that semblance of me. I think of my taste now, even back then. So I could always, looking back, I can always still see the stuff that I love now to do in that. And what happened to me, I think I think it went from following the thing that I liked, then following the thing that I think I should do, and then having a burnout from that, and then coming back to myself.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of like every episode of Chef's Table, where they want to be chefs and then they go out and work in Paris, and then they get broken by the experience and then go back to where they came from and then become what they always were meant to be. So, I always find that sort of story arc in those episodes. But yeah, I mean, I shot at AFI. It was just, kind of just trying to, I just sort of went along where I could and partnered in teams with people that I liked and like the stories of, and I think you just naturally have the sensibilities that you have, and you respond to the material on the page in the way that you can at that time. And I did the same thing when I left AFI, and I had a year of shooting short films, and they were, and I was always the sort of dark and moody cinematographer, and my first couple of shorts outside of AFI were definitely in line with that. And that wasn't a conscious choice. It was just I'd met some people and they liked a thing that I also liked, and we just did the thing that we liked together. And then when I moved to Sydney, which is where was my stomping ground up until I actually started working in the UK, it's and still is my Australian stomping ground. But I find that I found that you're faced with trying to build yourself, and you're no longer a student, and nobody gives a crap about you because you're at the bottom of the food chain, and you just sort of do things. But just to do anything. And that's when I feel like, I was influenced by some people who, I don't necessarily feel like I needed to be sort of, I guess I just started following without just follow rather than sort of following my sensibilities. Because I think that's what I thought the commercial thing would be, or this would make me money, or this would get me, and so I ended up, I think there were for a while. And then of course you just try to make ends meet and just say yes to anything. And, I had a 5D and whatever, and just sort of, I found myself just shooting stuff and then getting to a few years later and just going, God, I don't really I don't respond to any of it. What does any of it look good? And then after a year of shooting corporate stuff, you go, great, I've made money, but I can't, there's nothing I can show for it. And so it was then that I started going, okay, what is it that I really want to do? And just looking at imagery. And that was around the time that Instagram became a real thing. And, sort of looking at images and going, what do I respond to? What do I want to be known for? And then, so that it was many years after I, first started AFI that became a conscious decision to hone in on what it is that I want to do. and that changes with time as well, because that, at first it was, I want to make a certain look so I could get more commercials that I like, in the kind of commercials that I like. And then it became, I want to work in long form. What does that mean? So it's sort of and then you do the things that you want to do, and then you start going, oh, okay, cool. That's what that looks like. All right. So what do I want to do within that? So, I think you then start building, but, to answer your question, it came a lot later, as does maturity, doesn't it?
Did you have any female role models at that time?
No, to be honest. And I never really, I was lucky, I guess, that I never felt like they were missing. I had a lot of wonderful humans, a lot of Australian cinematographers who were very kind, and American ones too. I've always been met with kindness and support. So I that was the thing that was important to me. I never felt like, I hear so much about, now, especially speaking to young women who approach me, and, for them, it's like, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I just feel very fortunate that I didn't feel that lack growing up. If I saw that someone could do it, therefore I could do it.
That's interesting, isn't it? That you didn't find any gender barriers either, even back then.
No, I didn't feel it. I mean, certainly, who knows if my, trajectory would have been different if I was a guy, for example. Like, I'll never know if I ever experienced any sexism. I've experienced ageism, I know that much. But I think I experienced a little bit more. I started wondering if I would be in a different position years later, when I was in Sydney, and I would sort of see other cinematographers around my age sort of really steaming ahead and going, I wonder if it's because they were able to shoot more sooner because their male mates were shooting stuff, whereas I didn't have anyone to shoot for. I really had to really find people to do stuff for, and with, when I moved to Australia. And so, or moved to Sydney, I should say. And so I wondered if that was a thing, because the guys that I knew wanted to work with their guy mates, and there weren't that many female directors at that point who were really doing anything, or especially doing anything that I was in my wheelhouse, until I finally found them. And then that's when my work really flourished. So that's when I started wondering if it's sort of not really direct sexism. It was just more that, indirect, maybe, it wasn't that I ever went for opportunities and they went no. It was just that I think the guys found each other, and I didn't have anyone to find, or that, they already had their guys.
Were you identifying directors that you wanted to work with?
Always. I mean, it's, that's instilled in you at AFI times. You're always sort of paired, you're always, or rather you always have to create a team, and then you have to find the director, you have to pitch for yourself. Like, the AFI was sort of trying to prepare you, not sort of, they were preparing you for life. But it's something I do even to this day. I always have been, as your career progresses, people come to you, or agents help you out, all that kind of thing. But I'm still I still want it to be the thing that I create for myself, because I don't want to wait for fun, basically. And so, and also everyone else has to help everyone else, whereas I'm me for me. And so, yeah, I've always reached out to people, tried to find people that I like. And I just sort of, over the years, have become more and more sort of honed in on who that should be.
And I believe in 2018, you became one of only 15 women to receive accreditation from the ACS, the Australian Cinematographers Society.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. At the time, I was one of 15.
Yeah, there are hurdles to membership in this industry, right, Ashley? Talk a little bit about that, both in Australia and in the US and in the UK.
In Australia, it all ultimately comes down to a body of work. The difference between Australia and the other societies is that with Australia you apply, so whereas with the others you have to be invited or sponsored by a couple of existing members. But once you do, you have to show a body of work, and then they have to think about it, and then they decide. So yeah, I was very lucky or very fortunate to have, a number of existing members who who advised me basically. I was, deciding whether to, I was ready to, cut out a bunch of material to not submit with, and a bunch of the members were like, no, put this in, this will help, and so if I was left to my own devices, maybe I wouldn't have gotten in, because, you always look at your own work and you're just like, no, this is stupid. And they were like, no, it shows a body of work, Ash, put it in. So, and, but you can only apply after you've been an active member of the ACS for a number of years and had also like a paying member of the ACS, but also having worked in the industry for a long time with a certain amount of credits. So yeah, it took a few years, but yeah, and I think now there are 18 women, which. So 3 more since 2018, which I had to do a double take because I thought that there was more, but when I did the count on the website, yeah, I was surprised.
And so comes a point then where, I think, and throughout your career, you'll be looking at your portfolio and there's things that drop off the bottom, right? Because new material comes along, right?
Yes.
Things that you become more and more proud of. I'm wondering what the turning point was for you in terms of, wow, stand back and think, feel a little bit like a rock star, like, oh yeah, this is it. This is what I was aiming for.
Yeah, that's really a good question. I feel really grateful that there are still a few things on my website that I'm happy to show years after they were created. I think the first time was when to your earlier point, when I started to really hone in on who it was that I wanted to be creatively or cinematographically, finally shooting things and going, yes, it looks the way that I wanted to. It looks like the other images that I'm really inspired by, finally, and I remember, because there was so long where I would shoot stuff and just go, God, but it still doesn't, I don't like it, whereas that, and some of those things are still on my website. So, that started happening around 2017, I guess. And then I think then the next milestone was being, starting to work a bit more overseas from Australia. So when I started working in the UK and having, again, shooting things that not only was I really proud of, but then was being well received. It was written about or awarded or whatever. And so, and like kind of for a while, it was like every job that I did before, I'd have to sort of really drive for it. And for, 2019, I found that things were just coming and happening, and the final product was good. And it wasn't just like a short film. It was, commercials and music videos and with big, sort of names of talent, like sort of 4 musicians that everyone knows, internationally regarded musicians and directors from other countries. And I started feeling like, wow, okay, I'm building a career here now, finally. And then I think the next pinnacle was when I shot a series called Dangerous Liaisons, where I was one of the cinematographers on it. It was 2021 that we shot it, and it was the biggest thing I'd done to date. It was a Stars Lionsgate show, so it was an American English co-production. It was the largest largest in terms of scale and ambition and crew, and it was something that I had to lead. It wasn't. It was kind of really, I felt like, finally a big girl. And so, and in the respect that also that was, it was also beautiful results that I felt, but I also, other people said, and also like, directors and producers were responsive as well. So, I think when you kind of see the fruits of your labor, and you sort of show yourself that you can do it. And that's, they always say you're in competition with yourself, but it's when you can prove to yourself that you can do it that's most exciting.
You're no longer the shadow. You are the person that's creating the shadow.
Yeah, that's right. And I like me some shadow.
Of course you do. I'm not going to put any words in your mouth here because I know some of the work that you've done, Ashley. I want you to tell me if you had to pick a few of those projects, if you were to meet a stranger in an elevator and they asked you, well, okay, what's the best thing you've ever done, Ashley Barron? I
just say the thing I most recently, like the thing that represents me the most of the most recent stuff I've done. I always say Dangerous Liaisons because that was sort of the most recently released and one that really really represents me kind of through and through in terms of certainly lighting wise. I think, especially when you're working in television or anything long or anything, frankly, whether it's short form or long form, but you're working, for a studio or for a larger sort of machine, you're not, you share the storytelling and so many elements of your craft with so many others, execs, directors, producers, actors, that kind of thing. But lighting is one of the things that really stays yours, and also just, the collaboration that the director and I had on Dangerous Liaisons was really lovely because he was he had obviously he was the helm. He knew what he wanted, but he was very enabling. He was very encouraging, and sort of just was very much like, well, go do that then. Go lead, go talk to your team, and it was really empowering. And so, it was like a reflection not only in visually what I sort of can stand for, but also workflow wise as well. So that's what I was pointing people to if they can find it. Unfortunately, it's on Lionsgate Plus. It's on Stan in Australia, which is much easier to find. In America, I'm actually not sure where it is anymore, but in Australia, in the UK, it's on Lionsgate Plus, which I think you can get through Prime. So a little bit cumbersome to get to sometimes. But if anybody wants a link, hit me up. It's plastered all over my Instagram anyway, so you get the gist.
There you go. And you could probably find something of it on YouTube. Right.
Correct. Yeah, I hope so. I actually don't know. I mean, you can definitely find a trailer, but because I shot the second half of the series. I shot episodes 5 through 8. That anything that's out on YouTube usually is a combination of both myself and the other cinematographer, who did a wonderful job, of course. But it's not all my work, so I can't raise my hand to all of it.
The thrill, you talk about lighting. And I always have a smile on my face when I look at how things are lit, and think.
Me too. Well, when they're lit well, I do.
Yeah, when they're lit well and cleverly, craftily.
Yes. Story-wise, yes.
Oh, there's just something that,
magic.
It's magic. It is magic. And we used to say it's all about audio. Well, it's actually all about light as well. I mean, if you're photographers, it's light.
Well, it's funny. It is funny though. I got to say that the image wouldn't be anything without sound, in my opinion. And I think a beautiful score, a beautiful soundscape, or sound design is just all. So I will be one of those people that does say it'll start with audio.
I will screenshot all the time, and I see something and I think, oh God, how did they light that?
Oh God, yeah. I'm yes, all the time. I can't watch movies anymore or anything because I'm just constantly Googling what they lit, who the DP was, who the guy. Yeah, it's a problem.
And then I start stalking the cinematographer, and
oh my God.
it's almost an obsession.
Well, halfway through the movie or whatever I'm watching, I will be following them and texting them or emailing them, going, "Hey, can I please take a quick phone? Can you take a quick phone call with me to ask about your approach?" And I usually are very kind and do so, but yeah, I don't focus on that. And it takes a lot for me to actively be like, all right, stop looking at the craft and just look at the story, and it really takes a lot for me to look past. I don't want to say bad cinematography, but anything that I don't connect with, it takes me a minute to get past that towards the story as well. Because
it's a barrier. Right?
Yeah, there's some wonderful films out there. It can be a barrier, yes, and it's also bad. I need to work on that.
It's so off-putting that you don't even want to look at the story. It just takes a minute. Yeah,
takes a minute. Yeah.
I'm sure you've got lots of stories to tell, but you've probably got a big wish list as well, Ashley, now, because you're still at the beginning of you're still so young, you're still at the beginning of your career.
Yes, correct.
Okay, give us a clue of where you really want your career to go, or does it still just evolve on a day-to-day basis when the projects come along? And are you not at the point, I suppose now with all this downtime, that you can say no to anything?
It's a very good question. And I think life really does happen when you're making plans. You know, I do think that you can have strategies and you can have best of intentions towards that strategy and a goal. And I think that it's that what that goal should be, or you'd like it to be, changes. But also I think, yeah, like sometimes you make a call and you do a thing and then it wasn't what you thought it would be, and that takes you in a certain direction, or it was the thing that you thought it would be, but you feel, and you decide from there how you feel about it, whether it was a good experience or not. So I think, I mean, you know, I'm in terms of just like kind of in a practical sense, I would love to be able to find a balance between the long and the short, because I really love short form. I love commercials. I love music videos. I've always been the person that's tried to follow what I love rather than the money, if I can afford it. And so I'm always, you know, people will say there's no money in music videos, for example, but I'm like, music videos made my career, you know, in terms of when it came to the long form, people would, like, the directors liked my music videos or my short films, and that's what got me over the line. So, you know, I don't, you know, beyond strategy, I just really enjoy making them. And I'd love to be able to be as, I guess, choosy with long form as I can. To your point, that's not always possible. And the two worlds, particularly this year, are hard to find a balance between the two. So, but in terms of just what I'd like to do, I mean, I really enjoy character-driven work. You know, anything that kind of has a meaning that people, you know, I do think that films and, I mean, like the arts in general are a vehicle to create empathy. You know, you get shown into other people's worlds, and kind of a Trojan horse. You can Trojan horse a message through, you know, through a movie or through a fictional story or even a commercial. But you know, there's obviously, I would love to do a superhero movie one day. Like, I mean, my biggest dream would probably be something like The Batman, which Greg Fraser shot, ASC, but he, you know, that's like a superhero movie that like my brother and my nephews could go watch, but also like cinematographically and story-wise, beautiful craft. So, but yeah, so I also, to your earlier point, that does change based on so many factors, but that's the idea.
Do you have any favorite female directors that you'd like to name drop, that you've worked with or would like to work with?
Female, I mean, some wonderful directors that I worked with when I shot commercials. I mean, I've you know, I worked with a lovely woman last year called Faye Gilbert, who's great. The directors that established my commercial, or sort of my reel that got me going back in 2017 were a few female directors in Australia who are now, you know, going gangbusters. Cara Bartley, Sinead McDevitt, Hannah Ariotti, Cassie Jacolling, who's now in the US. Sorry, she's in Vancouver. So, you know, they are, but there's obviously female directors who direct things out, like, you know, Jane Campions of the world and Lynn Ramsey's and Aoife McArdles of the world, who are incredible. And they're only just a few that can pop into my head right now. There's so many more, of course. I mean, Rhea Moran, Rachel Morrison are just the next ones in mind. I mean, there's so many female directors who I want to work with, so we'll see what happens. Like, you know, I reach out to many here in the UK and indeed in Australia, and my American agent's doing it for me in the US. But it's like the list grows.
Yeah, I'm sure, and that's great. Yes. That, you know, there are so many women in the industry that, you know, that you do aspire to work with. I love that. Yes. You know, we all have to help each other, I think, in this.
I agree.
And you've won many awards, which I'm sure you're enormously proud of all of them. Does anyone stand out?
The ACS Award, the Australian Cinematographer Society Award for Best Music Video, which was my first ACS win for music video. The first music video I think I shot in the UK, and it was, again, one of the first big ones I did in terms of the band, the director, the production company. And it's just, besides the fact that it was for music, for my work, it was just the fact that it's ACS. I had been a part of the ACS for years, and in terms of like I was on the committee, and I was really an active member for a long time, but also and then to be accredited was huge. But I think there's something about your peers watching your work, and the way that the ACS runs it is that it's anonymous. Like your name is not. I mean, obviously people can see if they may be familiar with the work from seeing it themselves, but it's an anonymous process. So there's a collection. The jury just see the piece in front of them, and that's what they judge on. So the idea that if they don't, it's not about that's Ash's work if they don't know it already, of course. But yeah, it's being peer reviewed is the biggest achievement.
You like writing?
No. I love reading, but I hate anything to do with. I'm such an image person. I really am. I think I was good at English, creative writing when I was a kid. But even so, I remember being my brain's just not a wordy brain. It's like I said, I love to read. I've been reading philosophy lately, which I find fascinating. But no, I always need people to read my, when you're submitting for things, and you have to write essays. I mean, it took me 6 months to apply for my AFI submission for a reason. So I feel like I leave that up to the people who are very good wordsmiths.
So how would you measure success then?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Isn't that the question of a lifetime? And one I'll be answering for the rest of mine. I think, it's a very good question. It has changed over the years. It used to be success meant shooting a certain thing. It meant having certain representation, agent-wise, being international. Like there was whatever, or shooting with someone or whatever. And I think, right now success is finding work in the first place, but where I am in my life, I think it's also about finding the work-life balance. That's really important. So yes, maintaining a career as a cinematographer and when I say lucrative, I mean, the one that you can actually not be on the poverty line with. I don't need to be a multimillionaire as much as that would be nice, but just to, have something that is outside of the work as well. Because there was a long time where I was defined by it and there was nothing else. And if that wasn't around, I'd be kind of a bit of a shell. And now I have found so many things outside of it that also as a result, inform that. So that's currently what success is for me, finding a me outside of it as well as in. Let's see ask me in a year or 5 or 10, and then we'll see. Yeah.
It does evolve, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
Do you have a nickname on set amongst the crew that you work with?
On set? No, I think Ash. I think at IFI I was told that I was like Ash standby Barron because I loved to have lights on standby, just in case, because you need to be quick, and if things come up, they should be ready for you. So someone later told me that was that, but no, I think it was always Ash. I don't often get called by Barron, by my surname. So yeah, it was always, I think no, I'm just thinking now, people, I always wear a hat, and I think that there's a missed opportunity there for people. I've never been called a Mad Hatter or anything.
I like the standby, Ash standby Barron. That's as good as anything, right? It says a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
Always ready.
Yeah, standing by, literally. Yeah, that's right. On my toes.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I could keep talking to you about business. Oh,
I know. It's so much fun.
Long may you be creative and get to work with the directors you want to work with and just have fun and find that balance. As you say, it's all about, the life-work balance, isn't it?
Yeah. No, you're very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been very lovely to share.
And if you scroll down the show notes, you'll find a link to Ashley's, both her social media and her website, where you can find her current reel, as well as her portfolio. And whilst you're on Instagram, do look us up at The Art Podcast. That's art with 2 A's. Do leave any comments, questions, suggestions for guests that you would like to hear from on the show. We would love to hear from you. So until next week, when I'll be spotlighting another woman from the world of visual arts.